let's dive into the ACC power rankings as we do first. So I'm going to color code them this time because they're really essentially tiers now. We're most of the way through the season. We're at the very back end. We're in November. We're in what Clemson used to call championship phase. And so you really could feel a little bit more confident in your tiers. And this group I want to spend less time on than the top, I think, for obvious reasons. But this group is all very interchangeable. Stanford has been really bad. They've lost 6 in a row. And the only one of those that was even close was their loss against Wake Forest. I don't think they're very good. I don't think they have good fan support. There's almost nothing positive to say, so let's just move on from them. Florida State, you can argue they should be last. I think it's a toss-up between those two, and maybe they could even be a tier of their own because they're both struggling. I don't know if Florida State quit, but they only managed 11 points against North Carolina team they usually can handle, but not this time. And then Boston College, they had the week off. A couple of these teams here had the week off. So BC had the week off. Virginia had the week off. And Wake had the week off. Wake's going to go play Cal. Or they're going to host Cal on a Friday. And then Cal, North Carolina, maybe I should have North Carolina above Cal. Cal had the week off too. North Carolina earned a win. I don't know how much stock you put into that. They beat Florida State, but again, Florida State's really bad. But, credit to North Carolina, they're getting going. The one here that I do think is clearly above the others is NC State. They beat Stanford by 31 points. And yes, Stanford's at the bottom, but NC State is finding a little bit of momentum now after a really, really bad start. I'm going to pull up their schedule here. Not a team I particularly enjoy giving credit to, but they've seemed to right the ship. So prior to that, they beat Cal on the road 24-23, and then they come home. They face Stanford, so they face both of the newcomers, California newcomers, to the conference back-to-back weeks, and they beat Stanford 59-28. Before that, they were very competitive in losses to Syracuse and Wake Forest. So it seems, that their 2-2 start was ugly, right? They struggled with Western Carolina, got destroyed by Tennessee, struggled with Louisiana Tech, got beat pretty soundly, more or less destroyed by Clemson. And then they struggled with Northern Illinois. And then they lost to Wake Forest. So, it's most of their year, but competitive against Syracuse, and now 2 wins, and they host Duke. I think they have a shot. We'll see how much progress they really made, but I think they have a shot there. All right, let's get into some of the better teams. And forgive me if I have a cough. I was screaming at this Louisville game, doing whatever I could to help, but obviously it did not help. So here's this next tier in the ACC. And I think these teams are pretty interchangeable. I got Georgia Tech at 9. They had the weekend off. They're going to host Miami. Would be a fun upset, but don't really see it coming. We'll see how healthy they are. Without Haynes King, I don't know I don't even know if they're in this tier really without Haynes King. But with Haynes King, they're a good team. They're dangerous, and they're at home. Weird things happen in Bobby Dodd Stadium. So maybe they could make some noise down the stretch, but they've got such a tough schedule. So I think with Brent Key, they're making progress. I like the general direction of the program. I don't know that they're a especially good team or much more than just upper half or midway, kind of middle of the pack in a pretty bad ACC. Duke kept pace with Miami for a while. They actually had a lead, fairly deep into the game, but eventually Miami's passing offense and Cam Ward is just unbelievable. He's my pick for the Heisman. I think he will win the Heisman. I think he should win the Heisman. Threw for 400 yards. He's great. 5 touchdowns, 400 yards. He needs to win the Heisman. But Duke kept pace, and almost that is kind of impressive. Virginia Tech, Virginia Tech were without Kyron Jones, their quarterback, and Bashal Tutin, their star player, their running back. They had a 21-3 lead, and they blew it and lost in overtime to Syracuse. But I don't want to penalize them too much, so I only drop them from 5 to 7 here because they're without, their 2 most important offensive pieces. So, not a great loss, and they're not having a great season, but also you have those kind of injuries, it can be hard to win. Syracuse earns a big win, and for them, 21-3 comeback is great, but to do it in November when they always collapse, instead of collapsing, you come back. I think that's big for their culture. They have the same record as Clemson. They're 6-2. So kudos to Syracuse there. I think they're a solid team. I think Clemson benefited by not playing Syracuse, right? That's a lucky break for Clemson. So this next group, I actually have Clemson down to 5. I had them 1, dropped them all the way to 5, and here's why. And we'll talk about this more when we get into the Clemson review, the Clemson Louisville review. But they look like a poorly coached team. They're not out talenting good teams, right? So they were 11-1 in their last 12, but those wins were against mostly bad teams. They had the good Notre Dame win, which is the first of those 12. They beat a collapsing UNC. They beat a 7-win Kentucky. Those were all last year. This year, their best win was at Wake Forest, a fringe bowl team. That was their best win. So it's good that they looked really good against Wake Forest. They didn't actually look that good against Virginia or Stanford or Florida State. It's nice that they looked really good against NC State. But otherwise, you're assuming that beating bad teams pretty badly means they've taken big steps, right? They destroyed App State. Hey, maybe that they figured something out on offense. Maybe Georgia kind of hit them so hard they fixed them. Well, now they've played kind of an upper middle class team in the ACC, and you realize that's actually all Clemson is. Clemson's in the mix with a Louisville, with a Pittsburgh. If Clemson plays Louisville 3 times, they win 2 of them, maybe, but they also lost a home night game to them. So I don't even know that I would say that. Clemson looked like a very poorly coached team that didn't have the talent to overcome that against Louisville or really even come close. And then Pittsburgh, they took a pretty bad loss. SMU just jumped on them and blew them out. Really, really impressive by SMU. Mustangs win 48-25. They had 6 turnovers in their prior game. SMU had 6 turnovers last week against Duke, 3 of them interceptions by Kevin Jennings. And they were very, very fortunate to win that Duke game. But that sets them up to win the ACC possibly, or at least give Miami a battle because they bounced back big time. Kevin Jennings, 306 yards, 12.2 yards per pass attempt, and 2 pass touchdowns. Absolutely incredible. So with that, here is our number 1 and number 2 teams in the ACC. And I had SMU number 1. So Clemson was number 1. Miami was number 2 last week. Miami stays at number 2, and that's not a knock against them. I just think SMU's earned it. SMU got a dominant win against Pittsburgh, while Miami got another offensive shootout win over Duke this time. John in the comments saying that Pitt looked awful, and that's fair, right? Maybe I debated. I see your point here, John. I debated, do I put Pittsburgh above Louisville? I had them above Louisville at the beginning. And I thought about it and said, I would, without hesitation, pick Louisville to beat Pittsburgh. I don't know that Pittsburgh is that good. I think Clemson will be favored when they go to Pittsburgh. At this point, I don't know who I'll pick in that game. So the 3-4, that's why they're color-coded. That's why they're tiers. The 3-4-5 are pretty interchangeable. And the 1-2 are interchangeable. And Miami fans are going to crush me in the comments. And that's certainly fine. Let me know what you have to say. But I think SMU is the most deserving to have that the early struggles against Nevada and the early loss against BYU. But they fixed their offensive line. They switched their quarterback. They are dynamic, but I think their defense might be a little bit better than Miami's. They look a little bit more consistent. And now they've got probably the best win in the conference. It's close. I mean, Miami had a very close win over Louisville, which, Clemson couldn't beat Louisville. So kudos to Miami for beating Louisville. SMU destroyed Pittsburgh. I think that's a little bit more impressive. So I'm giving credit to SMU for that. Miami will probably be favored. These could go either way. And SMU does have lost to BYU, but has Miami played anyone as good as BYU? Right? So I think those top 2 are pretty interchangeable. But yeah, so Clemson drops to number 5.